Episode 123, The Battlefield. Welcome back to One Extraordinary Marriage, where we talk about life, love, and the pursuit of intimacy. You're here with Elisa DiLorenzo.
And Tony DiLorenzo.
And we are recording this on Sunday, so we want to wish a happy Father's Day to all of the fathers out there in our listening audience. For those of you that have been dads for a long time, and we know we have a lot of new fathers and fathers-to-be, happy Father's Day to all of you. It's a special day.
Hopefully you had an awesome day. I got out actually this morning for a quick bike ride after a really long bike ride yesterday, and I'm getting back into my riding. So those of you who remember from years when we first started to go, really into riding, and my buddy Nick died, and I forget what episode that was. But
about a year ago.
Yeah, about a year ago. But from the time Nick died until about 6 weeks ago, I only got on my bike maybe all of like 3 times. So almost a year that I just didn't have it in me. And so I'm getting back on and enjoying it. And this morning was one of those times for me to get out with a buddy of mine who bonked a bit yesterday. So it was fun to be out on the bike with him. Then we did church this morning. Mm-hmm. Afterwards, we did brunch, which took a long time, so we were all really hungry. And then we came home, chilled for a while, and it was really hot here where we live in Poway. So we decided, you know what, let's just go skip on over to the beach. It's a Sunday, it's Father's Day, and we ended up getting to the beach, and it was probably 15 degrees cooler.
At least. I mean, it was overcast, the waves were crummy, there was a rip current going on at our favorite beach. So it was just, that sort of put the damper on it. We were there for about an hour and a half and we were done. And that's what we've done today. And I hope you've had a wonderful day, whatever you guys have done. If you don't have kids, with your own dad. For Elise and I, our folks are away from where we live. So we just gave them each a call and said hello and wished them a happy Father's Day. Yeah, heard about everything that's going on with them. And you know, Father's Day is one of those holidays that evokes a lot of emotions. Mm-hmm. You know, because some of us have had very good relationships with our dad, and some of us have had not so great or even non-existent relationships with our dad. And you know, as we look at our marriages, that relationship with our dad, be you the husband or the wife, really does impact your marital relationship. How you relate to each other, what you saw modeled. Mm-hmm. You know, as a child, you know, someone growing up, who was your dad? You know, and so we're going to talk tonight about the battlefield, about what's going on in marriages today, and the battles that are taking place with all of the attacks on marriage and on men in marriage. So that's where the title came from, and really tying it in with Father's Day and just how important and vital that role is, the man's role is in marriage and family. And I mean, we heard a great sermon this morning. Pastor Harry Keel, one of the senior pastors at the church at Rancho Bernardo where we attend, and it was partly the catalyst for this episode because he was so impassioned about the role of fathers. And you know, as I'm sitting there and I'm listening and I'm taking notes, and he comes out, you know, this one line just like jumped off, you know, or jumped out of his mouth at me. And he's like, you know, guys, you got to be a husband first. That, you know, it's Father's Day, but you've got to, you know, love and cherish and honor and respect that woman with whom you made children. Right. You know, instead of being daddy first, or instead of being, you know, the best employee, the best business owner, the best whatever else, you got to look at your bride and say, I'm going to be your best husband. That's my role in this marriage. That's right. And in our first book, Stripped Down, 13 Keys to Unlocking Intimacy in Your Marriage, the first key, we call it from the top down. And the reason we call it that is because we believe, and we've seen it in our own marriage, and we've seen it in many marriages over the years,
that we can be pretty darn screwed up on what our priorities are in our marriage. And it should be God, your spouse, kids, work, other activities. And at times, that gets jumbled up. And many of you can probably relate. You know, when you start putting those kids in front of your spouse, the tension that starts rising. Or one spouse has just plowed himself into work. Mm-hmm. And how that just, you can start feeling yourself just falling away from God and falling away from your spouse and falling away from your kids. Or somebody like myself, and I've done all of these, believe me, I've been there, so I can talk mm-hmm. from it. Or like myself, when I was so into cycling, that other activity. I mean, I would leave my house at 5 a.m. and I would not be back home until 2 a.m. or 2 p.m. I should say, on a Saturday, right? And then I'd have to recover and recoup and try to just wind down from a stressful day on the bike and long miles and heat and traffic and buddies and everything. I had nothing to give. And then I would get up on a Sunday and I'd go out and do a couple more hours. And then I would ride another couple of times during the week. I was really messed up. And I know, looking back now, how that truly impacted my time with Elisa. The intimacy, all the intimacy, not just sexual or physical, but that spiritual and the financial and the emotional. So, you know, there's a battlefield out there that we guys are on. Mm-hmm. We're on this, and I'm going to read from Ephesians 6:10 through 18. This is the NIV version. It's called the armor of God, and I truly believe there have been many times in my walk with Christ that I have had to just dive into this because I was so beat down and I could just feel everything coming at me from every single angle. And to this day, that still happens. To this day, it still happens. So I'm going to read this. Finally, be strong in the Lord and his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. And after you have done everything to stand, stand firm then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. And pray in the Spirit on all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, be alert and always keep on praying for all the Lord's people.
Powerful. And it's true. I mean, Tony and I both, he talks about how, he's been all consumed in fitness, and it's true. There were times when he was cycling and I resented that bike. My kids would wake up on Saturday and Sunday mornings and, being home with them Monday through Friday, and especially because this happened more when the kids were younger. So I'm home with the kids Monday through Friday, and then Saturday would come and I'm home with the kids on Saturday because, they'd come into my bedroom and wake me up. Where's Daddy? Daddy's on his bike. He'll be home after lunch, and so there was really no family time. And I've got, girlfriends who I hear, their husbands are doing the same thing with work, and guys, this is not, we know as women that one of your roles is to be provider. The Bible talks about the husband being a provider. That is a biblical mandate, I guess. That might be too strong a word, but there is that kind of wiring for men to be the provider for their families. Yet it can be taken too far. When it becomes all consuming, when you forget just how important the relationship is, because you're so worried about making sure that every financial want is met. I mean, there's one thing, you know, when you're going out and you're working to meet the needs, you know, roof over their heads, food on the table. But when you're, you know, meeting all the wants but not spending any time with them, that's when it starts to break down. Your family wants to spend time with you. Your wife wants to go on dates with you. Your kids want to throw the ball with you. They want to see you on the sidelines at their ball games. They want to know that dad's going to be there at the spring program, or at, you know, the Cub Scout promotion, or, you know, the daddy-daughter dance, whatever those things are. Your kids want to know that you're going to be there. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, your wife wants to know that you're going to be there. She wants to know that she's not going to be the quote-unquote single mom for those activities, because you're out working, you're out exercising, you're out doing something else that changes the priority of the family. You know, she wants you. You know, when we say I do to each other, it's not, you know, I do kind of most sort of, you know, part of the time. You know, when I stood up and said I do to Tony, and you know, we've talked before about how, you know, we didn't realize what we were saying at 22 and 23, just how big that commitment really was going to be, mm-hmm. or how big that commitment is. You know, but now, you know, it's like I was telling the kids today, you know, your dad is a man of his word. You know, if dad says that he's going to be there, pretty much the only thing that's going to keep him from being there is if there's, like, you know, an accident on the freeway that he can't get around. Mm-hmm. You know, Tony makes it to the kids' games. He might be late, but he's there. You know, I don't, you know, or if we've got conflicts, one of us is always at the kids' games. You know, we work those things out. So the kids know that they're important, but more importantly are things like date night. You know, our June is just a crazy busy month, between birthdays and travel and end of the school year. It's just something that, you know, there aren't a lot of days available for date night. And
in this month as well, Elisa's gone for 3 or 4 days, 5
nights.
days.
Yeah.
Alex and I are going to our men's retreat. That's another weekend. Mm-hmm. Then the following weekend.
So now we're into July.
We have our marriage retreat. So we got a number of things going on this month. On top of that, I've launched another business. Mm-hmm. You know, so we got things that are just happening. And so we understand the craziness of life, and then raising the kids and everything that happens. And so one thing I will have to say that has really helped, and it's something we mentioned, we started a small group on Strip Down Again at our church, and we've mentioned it to you guys again, and folks have been emailing us about it. It's also important. It's the state of the marriage. Mm-hmm. It's taking a half an hour, maybe an hour. It might mean taking an hour. I don't know if you need an hour that first time, because I know for myself, when it gets the long duration, you just start to do this slow fade and your eyes just glaze over. So you're just like, ugh. But half an hour, state of the marriage conversation. It's one of those things where you guys got to bring this up to each other, mm-hmm. and start talking about these issues. We hear it time and time again, and we may sound like broken records, but I'm going to continue to tell you this. It needs to be done. It needs to be done. And if you don't know where to start, if you go on oneextraordinarymarriage.com, you can go into the resources tab, and we have 77 questions to get the conversation started. That will allow you to ask questions of each other that you can answer, and start breaking down these walls that are in between you, that are causing you angst, that are causing you to get through this battlefield together.
Oh, absolutely. And, I mean, you've just briefly touched on our small group, and we will not talk anything specifically about them because just, it's a privacy issue. But what I do want to say about them is that these couples the men in these couples, and I'm going to single them out just because of the topic tonight, but they've all made a commitment to their wives to participate in the small group. And that's one way to get through this battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
We've got this group of men and women who are taking time out of their summer.
Mm-hmm. Hour and a half, 8 weeks.
For 8 weeks to work on the intimacy in their marriage. Are their wives thrilled that they're there? Absolutely. Do they all come with baggage? Absolutely. We come with baggage into this group. I mean, we blow them away the first session every year because we're like, well, here's who the DiLorenzos are. And, some of you that have been longtime listeners, the baggage that we've carried. If you don't, some of our early episodes, episode 4, episode 7, will really give you kind of the synopsis. But it's sprinkled throughout the last 2 years plus years podcasting. But the reality is that these guys are willing to share.
Right.
Yeah, they're willing to say to their wives, you know what, we're going to do this. I commit to you for this 8 weeks. That's huge in a marriage. When both partners say, I commit to doing something to grow our marriage. Whether it's a small group, whether it's going to counseling, whether it's, saying, we're going to do a devotional, or we're going to go for a walk one night a week, and that's just going to be our time. Or we're going to make date nights. Okay, I was talking about date night. I'm coming back to date night. So June's crazy month. And so I get, Tony and I have been trying to figure out, when are we going to get date night in? And it was one of those things where the calendars just kept getting shifted. And so Friday afternoon, I get a phone call from Tony. Hey, you think we can get the sitter tonight? I think we can squeeze in a date night before, next week we've got things going on 2 out of 3 or 4 of the nights, and then you're gone and I'm gone, and this whole kind of thing. And I said, yeah, let me call the sitter. And so get the sitter. She comes over. We figure out where we're going in San Diego. We've got a couple beach cities that we love to go to.
Our favorite being Encinitas.
We really do enjoy Encinitas.
Yeah.
Just a great walking
area
we can go down. So we get down there, and it's not my night, it's not my month to plan date night. But I've gotten the sitter, which lesson number 1 that we've learned. I thought Tony had the sitter's number. He does not. So I need to hand that over to him.
Yeah. And let our sitter know that I'm going to have it.
Right. And I did tell her that the other day.
Good.
But we get down there and it's like, well, where are we going to eat? And I mean, you guys have heard us talk enough about date night that the DiLorenzo should not have been having this conversation. It was actually kind of comical that we were having the conversation because it was the whole, I don't know, what are you in the mood for? And there were just all these, so many neat little restaurants that we haven't tried in Encinitas. So we're like, oh, what do you feel like going there? That kind of thing. And so we literally walked up and down the strip, and it was one of those things that really kind of made us think, okay, we're really not practicing what we preach here. But it turned out really well because we ended up at this restaurant was it called the Barracuda?
I can't for the life of me remember the name of the place.
I think it was called the Barracuda.
Yeah, it was a wonderful little place that we ended up. Great food, really cool ambiance. It wasn't loud inside. And so, and the reason this works for us, though, even though, I should have been taking the lead. I was the one. It was my date night, and I realized that. The reason it works for us now, after all these years, is because we were just at a point where it was just like, let's just go see what's out there. Mm-hmm. Years ago, that would have frustrated both of us because it was where we were at in our marriage. It was why didn't you take responsibility for this date night? And that is truth. There are going to be times in your marriage, and it may be right now where you are in your marriage, that you want your husband, you want your wife just to take the lead. It may be with date night. It may be with sex. Mm-hmm. And you got to work through those, and you have to plan them out. So that way you guys are both on the same page and you don't get on a date night and get frustrated and it gets completely sidetracked and derailed because one of you didn't take the lead. For Elisa and I, it wasn't a big deal. I mean, for us, it was sort of like, well, I took the lead and just said, hey, let's make this happen. And once we got there, it was more of, hey, we want to walk around. We walked, we sort of, oh, look at that restaurant over there. Walked to one restaurant, noticed it was crazy, way too many kids. I mean,
that nixed that one right there. It's like, oh, this is date night. Get away from the kids.
Way too many kids. I mean, they're like running around. I'm like, no, not going to do that. And then there was another sort of like a South American fusion. There was another one we saw, an Asian one.
Yeah.
And then we just sort of happened around and we're like, oh, we've seen that restaurant a few times, and we happened to stop by, looked at the menu, and we're like, wow, this looks fantastic. And it worked for us.
And you can have those dates where you're like, you know what, we're just going to see where life takes us. And you can have all these hidden treasures. Mm-hmm. But there are huge battlefields going on in marriages because one spouse is carrying a disproportionate share of the load.
Right.
Be it when it comes to your bedroom and who's initiating, or be it on date night, or be it on household responsibilities. And this is not to single out male, female, because I know all different marriages have all different roles, responsibilities, reversals, things like that. But it's just to say, look at your marriage and say, is one of us carrying too much of the load here? Do I expect him or her to do this and this and this and this and this, and and then on top of that I want them to initiate in the bedroom, and I can't figure out why that's not happening? Somebody might be burned out in your marriage, or they might just be really overwhelmed or resentful with those expectations. And
Elisa and I have been there in the past.
Oh my gosh,
we have been there.
It's been ugly.
Yeah, where it's so frustrating. You can't even get to dinner and have a good time because you're just seething. And then when you get your check, you're like, my goodness, I could have just sat at home.
Well, or and I'm even talking too, even in the home. I'm not even necessarily on date night.
Yeah.
But when the kids were younger, and you weren't as involved with the kids, and so it was like, well, yeah, I'm making dinner. Of course, the kids are younger, so you've got somebody hanging off of you somewhere, or crying or napping or something. And then, well, now the dishes need to be done, and bath time needs to be done, and the stories need to be done. And Tony's like, yeah, okay, we'll get that done. Why are these kids still up? And I'm like, are you kidding me? And then, I'd crawl into bed and he's like, well, let's have sex. I'm like, no, I'm not interested in you. And then when we started really to put a focus on intimacy, all intimacies, I'm not talking, I'm not just talking about sex, but really discussing what was going on in our marriage. Suddenly I've got a husband that does dishes. Didn't know he did, he would do dishes before, but now he does that. I take the garbage cans out the night before the garbage man comes. And if I'm really lucky and I'm in the garage on garbage day, the nice garbage man will bring them up to the house for me, so I don't have to bring them up to the house. That's just a little side joke, but we've started sharing the responsibilities because our intimacy needs are being met. So the other obligations that we have as a family, as a couple, as husband and wife, those over the last couple of years have really kind of sorted themselves out. Does that mean that sometimes there's an imbalance? Absolutely. Part of that's just being involved with another person. They have different needs. Tony's been staying up late working on all this kind of stuff. And, so one of his Father's Day presents, I didn't quite get it done, but I was like, I'm going to get all the laundry done on Saturday.
Oh, yeah.
Because we usually do laundry over the course of the weekend, and then it's got to fold it. And there's like one little basket of clothes left, which usually on a Sunday night could still be the mound of laundry. And I was just like, no, you know what? He usually picks up a lot of the laundry responsibility on the weekends, and I'm just going to get this done for him. I know he wants to ride this weekend. That's what he wants to do. It's his weekend. It's Father's Day. Okay, so no big deal. Mm-hmm. It ebbs and flows. But that's because our focus is not on keeping track. And this is another challenge in this battlefield that's going on in marriage, and I know there are those of you listening to this podcast that are doing this right now in your marriage. You are keeping track of who does what every day. Well, I did this, so, you owe me one. Or I did this, this, and this for you today, so you owe me.
Yeah, you're the scorekeeper.
You are the scorekeeper. And I'm going to challenge you right now to stop. Because you want to destroy your marriage, keep score.
Yeah, something that we did a lot.
We've done it. Guys, I don't tell you these things because I've never done it and it's all hypothetical. I had, like this huge scorebook log in my head. Well, I did this. Why is he still giving me grief? Because I did, and I'd make sure he knew. Well, Tony, I did this today. And I did this and this and this. Right. So, you ought to at least do X, Y, and Z.
Right. And this battlefield we're on, it's a battlefield of marriage. There are outside forces. You guys have heard us talk so much about external issues that come up that are attacking our marriages. And what our prayer is for you is that when you step onto this battlefield each morning that you wake up, that you're on that battlefield together. That you're hand in hand. You're arm in arm. You got your spouse's back. Mm-hmm. You would take a bullet for your spouse. I would, in a heartbeat. I'd take a lot of them. Do whatever I have to do to save my wife. And that's where we want you to be. That's where we want you to get. And to do that, you got to take a step forward today. You got to take a step in the right direction. You can listen to this podcast all you want. Mm-hmm. But if you don't take action, nothing's going to happen. No change is going to happen. The battlefield you enter into, you will be separated, the devil will win, and your marriage will be destroyed. That's what it is. And some of you are going, no, we're gonna pick up. We're gonna get on this field together. Mm-hmm. We're gonna put the armor of God on together. We're gonna fight together. And we commend you. For those of you that are standing aside and you're going, I don't know. Well, you just pick up your armor and you go give it to your spouse. And you go, look it. We got a battle to fight, but I'm going to do it with you. So let's do it. Mm-hmm. And you start. Might be with that state of the marriage talk. For some of you, and we've been hearing this a lot since our 7 Days of Sex Challenge book has come out, for a lot of you, that has really impacted you in many ways. Mm-hmm. Because not only are you getting physical with each other and learning some new stuff physically, you don't have this massive breakdown of emotional intimacy. It's just very surfacey.
Right.
And by going through the 7 Days of Sex Challenge, it's breaking that wide open for you. Mm-hmm. Emotional, sexual, and then some of the spiritual aspect is starting to really start seeping in there for you. So you could be in different places. You could be in different ruts. They're not all do or die. But the thing is that we want you on this field together, fighting for each other. You guys are the team. It's not me against her. It's her and I together. We are the team, and we're battling together.
Right. It's the whole it's the whole us versus them.
Right.
Don't go into battle against the person sitting across the table from you.
Right.
The person that you said I do to. Go into battle against the world. There are enough forces pushing on the two of you, and we know because we feel them every day. There are enough distractions out there. There are enough temptations. Make a decision. Make a decision that your marriage is worth fighting for. That you will do whatever it takes to win this fight.
Right.
And be prepared to do it for the long haul. There was an article in our local paper this week, and I saw it, because we had just started our small group, and I thought, oh, you know what, I'm going to share this with them. And it's a couple that's been married for 70 years. And the picture...
70.
Yeah.
7
decades. The picture in the paper of the two of them, they are, just kind of sitting there and sort of a little bit reclined, but they're looking at each other, and you can just tell that they are probably as in love with each other today as they were when they first met 70 years ago, or married 70 years ago. And, they started talking.
I wonder how much sex they have. 70 years old.
It didn't say in the article.
Yeah.
I don't think the reporters... Yeah, anyway.
70 years married. 70 years married. My goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. I'm just trying to think for myself. I'm like, wow,
Where were you going to be in 70 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. But they were talking about, the key to their marriage and just what they did. And they talked about communication. They both talked about communication and not ridiculing each other and treating each other with respect. And the wife, I think her name is Betty, she used a word that we talk about, but I've never seen it used in a couple describing their marriage. And she talked about the devotion that they had to each other. And, I'm sitting here going, okay, you know what? I mean, these two married 70 years. They've been, he was military. They've been around the country and, just traveled and family and whatnot. And here they are. And it comes down to communication and devotion, treating each other with respect, being able to make decisions. She did say that in the article that they, when it came time for them, when they were faced with a decision, they would just, weigh their options and make a decision and move forward. They didn't belabor the point and all this kind of, they just, they made decisions, which I think is a lost skill. Because we face so many options. We got to dabble in everything. No, make a decision. Make a decision that your marriage is important, that it's worth fighting for, and start fighting today for your marriage.
Yeah. And so if you are, and you're at this point where you're just like, you know what, Tony and Lisa, we're ready. We just need a little guidance. Well, we have 2 books for you that you can pick up. One is called Strip Down. That's our first book, 13 Keys to Unlocking Intimacy in Your Marriage. And like we said, we lead a small group, and you can also, I will have a link below, but you can go to our page there, and we actually did a small group podcast. And we went over every single key with you in that podcast, so you can read the book and you can go over it together. For those of you who are like, you know what, we've been sitting on the sidelines and we want to get on that battlefield of doing a 7 days of sex challenge, pick up our book. You can go to 7daysofsex.com, and both of those books are available in Kindle at amazon.com. Just put in Strip Down or 7 Days of Sex. All right. With that being said, that's going to end today's topic. We have some emails that we've gotten in recently that we want to cover. And like you guys know, if you want to hit us up, let us know what's happening with you. info@oneextraordinarymarriage.com. You can email that to us. Elisa and I both get those. We both read those. We both pray over you guys, and then we answer. You can also call us in. We'd love to have some call-ins so we can play them here. 858-876-5663. And so that, just so you guys do know, most of the time when we're getting emails, we're doing it anonymously. We're not mentioning your names. We just feel better that way, unless you're okay with it. But anyways, so this first one comes in from one of our guy listeners, and he's been listening to our podcast while he's driving across the country, basically. A long 15-hour, not across country, I guess, but it's a 15-hour one-way drive. And he goes to say, I'm very interested in how you and Elisa moved from never having oral sex to her really enjoying it. And there's some more here where it's just not happening in his marriage. And so he's just wanting a little more clarification. How did we get from this point of, we never really had oral sex. I mean, the majority of our sex for the longest time was missionary style. Elisa rarely orgasmed.
Orgasmed.
What's
that word you just said?
She rarely orgasmed. We were always trying for penetration orgasm.
and that didn't work for us. So why don't you tell your story on the whole oral sex thing?
In doing so, the first thing I have to admit is that Tony was not my first sexual partner. And I know, shocking, everybody, jaws are hitting the ground. I think I've shared that before, but if you're a new listener. So there was a guy before Tony, and we had sex, and it was the oral sex was a very bad experience for me. Part of that had to do with the fact, and I've shared the book Taking Charge of Your Fertility on this podcast numerous times. I think it should be required reading for every woman, not because you necessarily need to know how to get pregnant, but because you need to know what your body does on a monthly basis throughout the month, because of all the hormone fluctuations, and just your body does amazing things all month long because of how we're wired to make babies, but you just need to know about that. And I didn't. And so I would have vaginal discharge and things like that I was like, what is going on? I'm in college. I'm like, I don't know what my body's doing. Girls don't talk. I mean, we talk, but we don't talk necessarily in detail about that. And so it was just a horrendous experience for me. So here I go. I come into this marriage with all this baggage on oral sex. And, and then Tony and I, we just did not have great sex at the start of our marriage. And, as we got to the point where trust started to build, because that was the other thing, I didn't have, even with the first guy, the trust wasn't there. So now I've got trust plus a bad experience leads to just those crazy negative tapes you play in your head where you're like, this is not good. This is not good. This is not good. And so Tony would attempt to try it. And I'm like, nope, not going there. Don't do it. Not interested. And I don't think it was until we really kind of did our 40 days where it really started to be something where I could conceive of enjoying it. Again, we were talking about this the other night when we were out on our date. Part of it is when you're in the intimacy lifestyle or when you're doing a sex challenge, you're having so much sex that you, at some point in time, have to talk about all the sex that you're having. And what's working and what's not working, and what's going on with my body and what's going on with his body. And so we started to figure out some patterns in my cycle throughout the month that lends me to being more receptive to oral sex at different times. But that's been a process. And it's not something that we could have accomplished if we didn't have so much sex. Oral and vaginal.
Right. And I think Elisa hit it on the head. Really, 7 days of sex challenge, I think, is always a great way to start things off. The bigger piece here is the intimacy lifestyle. We have figured we've been doing that for almost 3 years now. And, yep.
Is it 3? Or is it longer?
No,
4?
3. No, it's 3.
Okay.
Anyways, we figure we are having sex about 80 plus times a year.
Yeah.
So do the numbers alone, you start to learn what you like and what you don't like, what works and what doesn't work. So the whole process of us working through the oral sex was because, like Elisa said, the 60 days of sex challenge, 7 days of sex, and then intimacy lifestyle. This has given us so much material, let's put it just in this way, so much material to base what we're doing and what we like and what we don't like. And really, if you look at a pro athlete, what do? They train. They train. They get better, they get better. Right? That's what they do. You want to run faster on a 5K, what do? You train your body. You train to get better. If you want to have, a heightened sexual experience with your spouse, it's like training. You got to learn certain things.
And you also, and I am going to put this in male-female situation here because that's specifically what we're talking about. But my guess is that if a wife's not interested, there are a couple things that have gone on there. She's had a bad experience, like I did, she's been taught.
That's another thing
she's been taught that sex is bad, that you should, never have sex. I mean, women get all these kinds of crazy messages up until the day we get married. Sex is bad, sex is bad, sex is bad. You could get pregnant outside of marriage. Sex is bad, sex is bad, sex is bad. And then, a ring goes onto our finger. We say, I do. And suddenly sex is supposed to be this magically beautiful thing when we have to, kind of erase all these other messages. So for some women, that's very hard.
Yeah.
And so what I would say to the husbands out there is that if this is an issue in your marriage, you're going to have to start working on the trust issues, because until she trusts you enough to do something new sexually, she's not going there. We always say you never go farther than the most conservative spouse wants to go. So if she says no, guess what? The answer is no. Don't push her. Just, maybe next month. Maybe at a different time of the month. That's where taking charge of your fertility helps, because I know the week right after my period, I'm most receptive.
Yeah.
Just the way it goes. So if you've got comments on that, I would love to hear your thoughts. If you're a wife who has worked through this challenge in your marriage and you would be willing to share your story anonymously, email me at askalisa@oneextraordinarymarriage.com. If there's something else that you found that has worked in your marriage, share that. You can email me, or you can even share it on our One Extraordinary Marriage Facebook fan page.
Yeah, you can message us there directly.
You can also message us. But there are couples all over the world that are dealing with this issue. And so if you've overcome it in a different way than we did,
please share
it, because your information is valuable. And we respect your privacy, and so we will keep those responses anonymous, but help others in this community. There's a lot that you can do to help somebody else's marriage.
Yeah, so keep those emails coming, you guys. We thank you for all you do. We love you. Have yourselves a fantastic week, and we'll catch you in 2 weeks.